like to call this meeting to order of the Oconee County Planning Commission, Monday, June the 6th at 5 o'clock. Our first order of business is invocation. Mr. Nix.
Let us pray if you'd like. Heavenly Father, we ask that you please watch over this committee and the planning staff and guide us to wise and safety-conscious decisions in support of the public. We also ask that you watch over the county law enforcement, first responders, and other county workers as they perform their duties, that they may return home safely to their families after every shift. We ask that you please watch over the county and state leaders as they work to make the county and state a better place to live each day. In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Alex, can you lead us in pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Our next item is the approval of the minutes from our May 16th meeting. Do I hear a motion?
So moved. Second.
Is there any corrections or additions to the minutes? If not, I call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And I was not here.
Passes with one abstention.
Yep. Commission member, no, let's see. We do not have any non-agenda items, public comment, so we'll go with commission member comments. Anyone have anything?
I do, sir.
Go ahead.
I'd just like for us to keep in the forefront the issue with land development in the county. I've seen in the news recently that a lot of our adjacent counties, especially over in Georgia and Pickens County, have put some moratoriums on development and building. And I don't know if that's the route we want to go, but we need to keep our eyes open. Seen over in Greenville County last week, we got a little rain, thank to goodness. Some of us got a little more than others, but I seen an area in Greenville that got 1.2 inches of rain and they put up a flash flood. Streets were flooded, ditches were flooded. It wasn't from the 1.2 inches of rain, it was from poor planning. So they, just sidewalks and houses and rooftops causes water to go in concentrated places. So I'd just like for us to keep our eyes open and be listening to the public and watch the news and see what's happening around us, see what other counties are doing and dealing with and how they're dealing with it. And let's be proactive and have some good vision going forward and see if we can head off some of those issues.
Anyone else? If not, we'll move into staff comment.
Thank you. Just a couple of things, housekeeping stuff first. On the 22nd of June, you should have all got an email from 9 to noon. The Appalachian Council of Governments is doing their continuing ed for you guys here in this room, and that's for y'all, for the Ag Board, for the Board of Zoning Appeals. If you haven't gotten up with Vivian, just let her know if you're going to be able to make it. And if you can't, please take another one. There's a couple other ones coming up too. Next Monday in this room at 6 o'clock, the Agriculture Advisory Board is having a speaker from Clemson Extension. He's going to be talking about preserving family farms. If that's of interest to y'all or anybody you know, please help get the word out. We've issued a press release and I sent all y'all a flyer on that. Y'all can hand out as you see fit. And the last thing I have for you guys tonight is a continuation of some of the residential, legal residents versus non-legal residents that we've been talking about off and on past couple of meetings. And basically, Kevin and I went through almost 40,000 TMS number listings and looked at all of the residential improved parcels in the county. The important thing to keep in mind is that the non-legal residence does not account for what is on that piece of property. So if it is a series of townhomes or student housing development, it could be any number of individual dwelling units with any number of people on it, but it's still just going to be one parcel number. So this took a little bit. We're still working on it. I'm trying to get the next step for me. It's getting a total valuation for each of those to see kind of how that 23,000 equates to what the total residential improved parcel value is, and get that percentage as well for y'all. So hopefully we'll have that in 2 weeks for y'all, which might kind of show some of that as well on the 4% versus 6%. Happy to answer any questions about this while y'all are looking at it. Yes, sir.
Can you give us an update on how many subdivisions or anything you've had since our last meeting?
We've had one additional subdivision that's come in. It is a minor subdivision. It is for 5 lots on one parcel. 4 of them are exactly 1 acre, and then the 5th one is, I want to say 3, but I don't have it in front of me. It's an existing home. They are subdividing and going to sell each of those lots individually.
Right here, it says not legal residents.
Yes.
Clarify that, should that be non-legal residents, or what's the definition of not legal resident there?
So it is not a parcel that's identified as someone's legal residence. So a multifamily complex or a student residential complex is not just one person living on it that somebody else owns and renting to them.
Okay,
It is by an entity or an LLC or something other than that.
Thank you.
So it is, okay.
thank you.
Does anybody else have anything else?
Okay, well, we'll move right along. Before we get into item number 8, the subcommittee updates, we have Mr. Tom Markovich.
Yeah, I wanted to speak, addressing the idea of, on subdivision. Discussion came up the other day in the subcommittee about the possibility of having the planning commission actually be the approval for subdivisions. And I have an issue with that, but for a very specific reason. One, I think there's a little bit of confusion over the role of the planning commission in this particular instance. Subdivisions and the process that we go through according to the Comprehensive Planning Act is about checking the boxes. In other words, all these regulations for these subdivisions have already been approved by council, okay? Planning commission can't change, they can submit changes and ask the planning commission to make some changes, but really and truly, the process for approving a subdivision is checking boxes. That's all it is, because all the regulations are already in place. There was the idea that came up during discussion in the subcommittee that was basically, well, if the public's involved in it, they'll get to have some input. Well, not really. Unless they've got an interest, in other words, unless they've got standing to bring an issue. I'm not sure that they really do, and even then, they couldn't really be able to bring it forward until if they wanted to appeal the decision. And that's the other point that has to do with, right now, staff takes care of it. They check the boxes. They make sure every single thing in the list of things that had to be done, they check it out. Now, if in fact one gets approved or disapproved, and whoever the subdivider is, if they don't agree with it, they come with an appeal. The appeal comes to the planning commission. So it's not like the planning commission doesn't end up getting a say. So I really don't see the point. I mean, the process that we've been using for the last, since 2000, well, actually since 1997, has worked very well to have staff checking the boxes. And the thing of it is even if the planning commission were the ones that overseen it, you're going to come in here and ask Mr. Cooley, okay, did we check all the boxes? I mean, that's what it comes down to. So I don't agree with the idea of having the planning commission approve the subdivisions.
May I ask a question? A couple of questions. First one's a lead-in question. Do you consider yourself a subject matter expert on subdivision processes in this county?
Do I consider myself a subject matter? I'll put it this way. I helped write the state law. I've made several amendments to the state law. I probably have more experience with that law than many other people in this county. but subject matter expert, I'm not 100% sure that I would.
Okay, my follow-up question on that is, do you consider the processes and procedures and different agencies that we go through for getting a subdivision approved, I guess through planning? Do you consider that process adequate? And could you explain some of the pieces of that process so that the public better understands that?
Certainly. One is roads, okay? The roads department goes in, James is gonna send them subdivision, and they're gonna go through and they're gonna check off every single, they've got boxes they have to check. Where curb cuts are, where they're gonna be located, sight lines, all this other stuff. Grade. I heard somebody talking one day about a road gonna be too steep. There's grades. A road can't exceed 12%, period. And if they think it's going to, they're gonna turn it down. And so there's a situation right there where our county roads department has a very firm grip on what's gonna happen. Now, let's talk about upgrades of roads. In certain situations, if you're on a county road and all of a sudden you're putting in more than 10, making a subdivision to create more than 10 residential units, you're gonna have to do a road study. And if it calls for that road having to be upgraded, the developer is gonna have to upgrade that road. Now, he gets to go back and basically utilize the increase in the taxes to help pay off that road over the next 10 years. But nonetheless, he still has to go in there and upgrade that road. So I never worry about county roads becoming an issue in terms of too much traffic on a county road. It's not gonna happen. I mean, the road has to be upgraded. State roads, that's a whole different issue. That's the state, okay? And as the county administrator told me one day, she said, we ain't got a dog in that fight. And so, that's not how she put it, but that's what she meant. Go ahead. DHEC is another example.
So I want to continue what you're talking about, but I want to ask Mr. Coley, what percentage of our subdivisions that we have proposed, what percentage of those are on state roads and what percentage are on county roads? Do we know?
I can give you a ballpark, it wouldn't be exact, and
That's
wouldn't
fine.
be held to it, but I would say the majority, greater than 50% are on state roads.
Understand. Thank you.
The only other thing, I was gonna say DHEC. I mean, DHEC has oversight on us for water, sewer, soils, just a multitude of things. And so, we answer to DHEC for, they have to approve our subdivisions. They have to, and if they look at certain ones, then they have to look at them in view of the septic tank laws. And they have to make sure that we're gonna have the reserve areas that are gonna be necessary to, put in a septic system and all that sort of thing. So, I mean, there is so much oversight. And, the only other thing that we've come up with, and this came up in our discussion about curb cuts, and I think is a valuable tool, is that state highway department. There are certain things that they can do to actually go in and consult with somebody who's getting ready to develop a piece of property and there's concern over the number of curb cuts that are gonna be on a state highway. They can actually consult with them and say, look, we're gonna be able to approve X number of lots, subdivided lots, but if you come back later and want another, it may not get approved. I think that's smart. It's smart for the developer because he's gonna know ahead of time whether or not how he's gonna go about that approach to that thing. I think that makes good sense. That's not in place yet. That is something that subcommittee's talking about. I think that's a very valuable tool. So,
I got one question. You said the planning commission doesn't have basically a dog in the fight about reviewing subdivision plans. According to the South Carolina Local Government Comprehensive Planning and Enabling Act of 1994, we do.
no question about
I mean,
it. The planning commission can, in fact, but what I'm saying is, all you can do is check the boxes.
Well, right now, all we can do is just give our opinion because we have no development standards. We have no rules and regulations to say one way or the other. For the most part, we have some, but we don't have a lot. We would be giving our opinion on a lot of things, but we do have, according to this document that I read, we do have the power to review all subdivisions before they get approved to be in this county. We have the authority to look at them, and if we find something wrong with them, we can say, nope, we don't like that, change it. According to everyone I've talked with between here and Spartanburg County, every planning commission has that authority, according to this document that the state has right here.
Can I make a comment? Frank, Mr. Chairman, why does that not seem to get to us though? What's the process of, I've been here a year and a half and we haven't been proposed with a
Our
planning.
review process was voted away from us, by us, and gave to, we didn't want to do that at the time, which was what,
I'm not sure, right, it was prior to me.
It's always been
It was
this
when
way.
Adam.
Since we've had the Comprehensive Planning Act here, it's always been staff.
When
Tom
Adam-
Hendricks said that.
Adam Chapman was here and we voted to turn everything over. We wouldn't have anything to do with plats or nothing. We turned it all over to planning staff at that time because we didn't have anything to do with it or something. But according to this Planning and Enabling Act, we do have that power to look and review and tell them, no, you can't do it here, you gotta do it over here, or what have you. Just like the planning staff has right now.
Unquestionably have the right to review it. However, the state law also says that the subdivision must comply by the regulations. And the planning commission does not have the authority to change the regulations. Only council can do that, not planning commission.
Right.
So
And we don't
If it
have that many
complies-
regulations at this time.
if it complies and the planning commission were to turn it down, it's probably not gonna go too well in an appeal.
From my standpoint and from what I'm hearing from everyone else, it's not our opinion to stop subdivisions. We're not wanting to stop them.
Right, no, I
We're not
understand.
wanting to control them. We're wanting to manage the growth in this county. That's it.
I understand that.
And I don't know where everybody's getting this
Well,
bad taste in their mouth, but we do need to manage the growth in this county because it will get out of hand. We will turn into an Easley. We'll turn into a Greenville. Everybody in this county wants to say, we want our rural values, we want our rural look. You can't have it when you got 950 people moving in one area. It's no more rural. It's concrete, it's pavement, no green space whatsoever because they clear cut every tree off of it. So it's water eroding all the soil, what's left there on everybody else's property. So if we don't manage this in some way, it's just gonna get out of hand. And when you leave Westminster, you're gonna drive 6 miles and you're gonna run right into Seneca, and there's not gonna be any difference. It's gonna be subdivision all down the line, all the way to Seneca, subdivision all the way down the line from Walhalla. And we're not wanting to stop this. We want growth. We want people in this county, but we've got to manage it and get it to where it doesn't get out of hand, to where we have to take 4.5 hours to get from Westminster to Seneca with the traffic. Our roads in this county, statewide or countywide, can't handle the traffic.
I'd like to comment, sir.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Tom, for your comments. You're right, we do have a plan to that says check the box. So I get a feeling that's more of a rubber stamp process. We have 24 pages of regulations or subdivision requirements, but they're extremely lax. They need to be updated to current conditions. I'm not gonna say they're wrong, but there's some things that need to be changed, you know, just because of the state of the growth has exceeded these recommendations or requirements. That's what they are, they're recommendations. So I do appreciate what you're saying, but I believe the process of checking the boxes has turned into a rubber stamp process. I don't know that any of these folks that's in some of these departments has the I'm gonna say strength or ability or basically were the guts to bring up a concern about a road, about a bridge, about a curb cut. I think they fear the repercussions if they say no or bring up a concern. So I think everything's just stamp, get it out of my way. But we do have 24 pages of requirements. They're just very lax. So.
Yeah, well, and I guess my point is, the planning commission has all the authority in the world to create that set of regulations. That's where that thing came from.
Correct.
They recommended these regulations to council.
Yes, sir.
And council made up the regulations. But once they're in place, it's not like zoning, it's not like some of these other things. I mean, because the comment was made the other day, the public needs to have some input. Again, it's about the regulations. There was a comment that, well, we might be able to negotiate. But it's a regulation. What's to negotiate? And if the regulation's not strong enough, then yeah, look at what needs to be done to strengthen the regulations. But in fact, when it comes down to approving the subdivisions, it is about checking boxes, pure and simple. That's it.
Mr. Nick.
Go ahead, Dave.
I got a comment. So if we feel like, and I've said this before, I remember saying this several meetings ago, if we feel like that the staff can't execute the existing regulations on the books with rigor and formality, why would we want to create new regulations? I mean, that's what I hear us talking about is we want new regulations so we can restrict growth in the county of low-income and middle-income subdivisions. Because we're sure as heck not going to stop the high-end subdivisions from developing. They're developing right now. Last year, we got 93% of all the development in this county was second homes, lakefront. So we've got to figure out our identity here. Are we going to let people build here at minimal cost, or are we not? Because if we decide we're not, that's going to restrict development for low-income and middle-income housing. And that's what I hear you guys headed towards. I mean, we've got processes and procedures in place to control how these subdivisions go in. They don't go in just like this. It takes time to put a subdivision in. It takes time to build them, it takes time to grade them, it takes time to approve them, it takes time to work through all the processes and procedures. So I guess my question is, where are we headed? Because I don't think we're headed where I think we want to head. If we're not going to let people live here.
Tom, would you confirm a comment that you made the other day that one of the subdivisions you went and looked at proposed that's going to end up being a low to middle income subdivision? Is that accurate?
Let me put it this way, I know who's developing it. I see how they're moving the dirt. It looks like they're gonna be slab on grade houses. I'm pretty sure I know who's gonna be building them. But I can't say 100%, I mean, there are middle income houses that are slab on grade sometimes. There's high end houses that are slab on grade sometimes. So that's not the definitive thing, but based on who I think is gonna build out and the way they're grading the land, I think it'll probably be an affordable range.
Thank you.
I think.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and, since Mr. Smith is not with us, we'll just go ahead and do the subdivision unless, do you have on
Yeah,
the
you're gonna do curb cuts.
Yeah, I was gonna go ahead and mention.
curb cuts?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let Mr. Garland, you do the old curb cuts first, and then we'll go into
Right.
subdivision.
I'm serving on that subcommittee, but, James, I'd like for you to feel free to chime in on anything. I got some notes from Mr. Smith, and, so I think this isn't so much as an update as just maybe keep it in mind. The way I see it is, and Tom brought some of this up as well, is when we met with Ben Olson of the South Carolina DOT, one of the major things that I got out of that meeting was he talked about the approval process and how Oconee County, if they wished, they could set up a process that allow the state, you know, when there's a state road included, like say 123, when it's appropriate to do so, go ahead and let them be in on, you know, the whole scope of what the development might be. So that the developer, the state, everyone, you know, is on the same page so that nobody just gets blindsided. And also, and it has a lot to do with our work in the Planning Commission, is to look to the future. So it's not just, hey, we're going to approve this right here. It's also a conversation that includes, well, what do you plan on doing in the future? Because that might have something to do with what, you know, we would make a decision on this that you proposed, depending on what you plan on doing in the future. Is that what you're thinking as well, Tom? Okay, I just want to make sure we're on the same page there. And Ben also provided to us the name of the contact, and maybe James has already looked into this a little further, but who we would write a letter to request that this be a part of the process, if we so desire to do it. So we have that contact information. Is that correct, James?
So that's the SCDOT contact if we want to push this forward.
Right.
And just to clarify the previous, so what Ben was talking about is a process that some other counties are doing that is including the DOT earlier in the process. So it's getting it in front of the DOT at the same time it's in front of us. Right now, DOT is doing their own thing with it, so it's either they're gonna issue an encroachment permit or they're not. And we just wanna see that they can get their encroachment permit as part of our review if they're on state road. So this is getting that encroachment permit prior or earlier on so that we see that they can get it. We're making sure they have it in front of DOT. We're not approving something that's gonna limit DOT's ability to give them some options and say, you need to have a shared driveway here, or you can only have one curb cut here, if you're planning on doing something that's gonna split it.
Yeah, now I don't know everything about this, but from what I've perceived so far, it seems like a win-win-win situation, you know, between the developer, Oconee County, and the state. That if we were to change that process to allow them, as you just described, to do, is that?
DOT was in favor of it.
Right, okay. Okay, there was also some talk about the owners of undeveloped property along 123. It had been suggested that, and I think James brings this up more than anyone, whenever we're talking about something, it's always good to bring the stakeholders in early. And we haven't sent a letter out to anyone yet, but it was discussed that possibly contacting the people who have undeveloped land along 123, just to let them know this is being discussed, and they may decide to come to a meeting like this if it's on the agenda, that kind of thing. So those were the only things that Mr. Smith had mentioned to me to mention to you. But also, the next meeting scheduled for June 16th at 9 o'clock. And my understanding is it would be in this room. Is that correct, James?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, we've had two subcommittee meetings on the subcommittee for development standards for subdivisions. Mr. Markovich, myself, and Mr. Smith have had several hours discussion along with James. We have two proposals, and this is just for information only. We haven't got a lot of details involved, but we just want to see what the commission's taste for these ideas are, see if we need to go any further with them, and get your input. But like I said, the details are not here yet. I do have some details, but I don't want to share those unless I'm asked. But the proposals I got two. In the unincorporated areas of the county, this subcommittee proposes the following. Again, this is for information only. To establish an overlay on existing and newly constructed sewer lines in the county, public lines only. Number 2, give the citizens of the county the opportunity to voice concerns about high-density development in the unincorporated areas to the Planning Commission. The example would be a public hearing. The site would be posted with signs, and then within 45 days, they could bring their concerns up. The reason I brought that up is in prior meetings, gentlemen, we've had folks that showed up were just shocked or was kind of, that they wasn't informed what was going to happen next to them. So I think it would benefit our citizens and give the public input to be able just to voice their concerns. And like Mr. Tom says, probably not a whole lot we could do unless we do some rule changes or some development changes. But at least they get the opportunity to voice their concerns, which I think is something we should do for our community. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be willing to listen and take your input. Or if you want a little more detail, I'll be glad to give it to you.
Does the public not have the opportunity, the power, I guess you'd say, to voice their concerns about these items anyway, at our meetings or at council meetings?
Well, can I comment?
Yeah.
Sir? There's 24 pages here, and I will be the first to admit I haven't read every page to detail. They probably do have that right to do that, but the thing is being informed that it's happened. If y'all remember the gentleman that came in here several meetings ago that lives next to the development going on Mountain Road, you know, he said he had no idea what happened. Didn't even know the land had been sold. So, you know, he would have liked to probably have his input.
Not being the bad man here, but if people would look on the county's website, look at the agendas, look at the backup material, they would know what's on each agenda for council and this meeting. But I hate to say it this way, but it's really none of nobody's business if I sell my land. It doesn't have to be broadcasted over the airways if I decide to sell my 5 acres of land to whoever. I mean, granted, my neighbors might like to know it, but it's really none of their business. It's like it's none of my business that the guy beside me bought 200 acres, which I would have loved to have bought, and he put chicken houses, well, I guess 400 feet or whatever.
No, sir, you're wrong there. If he was going to do a poultry production facility, you would have been notified by DHEC.
Nope, never was notified by DHEC. I was notified by the man that bought the property.
No, you wouldn't have been
And
notified.
when he was gonna do the chicken houses, he said, he come by and said, this is what I'm gonna do. What is your objections? What could I say but, hey, you bought the land?
Right.
I mean,
They would have been signs posted around the so many feet of the property line that there was going to be a public hearing.
I don't ever remember that. But anyway, but what I'm saying though, it's still none of nobody's business where I sell my land, whether I sell it or not. So, but the public has every opportunity to come to any meeting, whether it be our meeting, agricultural board, any other thing, council, and voice their opinion, their concerns, their like or dislike of what's happening. They have every right to do that, and they have all these opportunities to do that. So I don't know what are we going to do if somebody's selling their land, put a big ad in the paper and say, hey, John Smith is selling his 200 acres.
Well, Mr. Chairman, in all due respect, I think you're concentrating just on the sale of the property. There's a lot of other processes to go through that, and I agree with you. I don't have to let you know I sold my property, but the person that bought it, if whatever his plans were, if it was going to negatively affect that adjacent property owner, I think they should be notified. Or have the opportunity to just voice concern. There's nothing they're going to be able to do more than like at current, the way our rules are set up. But, you know, it's a crude awakening one day when all you 100 acres of trees next to you are gone and you didn't know. You didn't have a voice, you know, in the say so. So, with that being said, you're right, you know, if any of y'all decide to sell your property, it's a matter of public record anyway. If if anybody wants to know, they can go look. So it don't have to be announced over the airways, no, sir, you're correct.
Dave?
So Pat, let me just make sure I understand what you're suggesting. You're suggesting that, once a subdivision's approved or prior to a subdivision being approved, we put that individual subdivision on the agenda for people to come comment on, express their concerns? Is that what we're trying to
Well,
say?
the details, that's a great suggestion, and the details, well, I don't have the details, I'm just exploring the idea.
Is it just subdivisions, or is it any kind of property manipulation?
talking
like
about subdivisions.
Chicken houses or commercial, or just subdivisions, right?
Just
So
development.
just the subdivisions we discussed a few meetings ago, that type of stuff?
Well, we're a subcommittee for subdivision development standards.
So, all right, so I think you answered my question on that. I got another question, if I may, Mr. Chairman. So if the subdivision, so there's a point when the property owner sells the property and then the subdivision approval process occurs, or is it before the owner sells the property? Which is that? Does anybody know?
Could be before or after, as far as I know. Is that correct, James? It could happen before or after the sale of the property.
Ask the question again.
So the subdivision approval process, what initiates it? Is it initiated as a part of selling the property, or is it not related to selling the property? Could the subdivision process,
It is related to the development of the property.
so could that starts before or after the selling of the property by the owner, correct?
So you would have to make an application for a major subdivision. You would have to be the owner of the property, and then
Okay.
you would have to have your plans to be presented.
But I'm saying, if Mr. I've owned this for 10 generations, wants to sell it to a developer, and he sells it to a developer, the developer now initiates the subdivision the development process, or
If they choose.
could the owner actually start that process before they sell the property to said developer?
I guess they could. It'd be really hard for me to.
What actually normally occurs?
So typically what would happen is somebody identifies a piece of property they're interested in developing. They will talk to the owner of the property about purchasing it from them. With some good faith, potentially they might start doing some preliminary design work, thinking about it. But they wouldn't do anything heavy engineering until they own the property.
Okay,
In
all right,
order
so,
to submit a application, you need to be the legal owner of the property.
okay, so that makes sense. So the developer initiates the subdivision process.
So if you as a developer buy a piece of land from Frankie speculatively and say, please, the market's not right now, I'm just gonna hang on to it, there's no subdivision that's started. And then Mike might say, well, I don't know if Frankie's ever gonna do anything, or I'm never doing anything with it, so he can buy it from you. So now it's changed hands twice, there's no subdivision that's been applied for. And then Alex could buy it from Mike when he's ready to do something with it, and then Alex is ready, he's gonna do something, he's got an engineer on board, then they would apply.
Okay, so where I'm going with all this is, you're not infringing on the property rights of the seller if we have a hearing on the subdivision development process. It's just it's a method to get the public involved to express their concerns. Is it a property infringement rights issue on the developer? No, I don't think so. I think it's just allowing the public, the adjacent property owners, to assure themselves that the subdivision process is being vetted properly. So I actually don't have an issue with that.
Thank you, Mr. Nix, appreciate that.
If y'all will allow, Tom, you wanted to
It's the
say
way
something?
the regulations out and still get the public involved.
I just wanted to chime in because a lot of discussion about quote-unquote subdivisions, and I think in general, most of y'all are referring to large residential subdivisions. However, the laws for subdividing property, they apply to all divisions of property. If you you take one parcel of land and divide it in two, the same rule. Now, we have different types of, we have minor subdivisions, or we may have a situation where you have, somebody dies in the family, ends up becoming heirs property, those kinds of divisions. And so there's a different process for those, but a lot of times, we're not, when it comes to commercial property and commercial subdivisions, there's different rules, but, we tend to be focusing on one kind of subdivision here. But in truth, it's going to, you have to look at the entire thing of subdividing all types of property, no matter what. So.
Go ahead.
To further that step of what Tom is saying, you can take and slice off a 6-inch sliver off of your land and give it to your neighbor. It is a subdivision that goes through planning. So a lot of times we use the word subdivision wrong as a definition.
That's been brought to my attention. We need to actually change the word subdivision to something else, but that's just a legal term.
I think we've all been talking pretty colloquially, and I think everybody does know what you're referring to.
Well,
But
I'll speak, sorry. So the subdivisions I'm talking about, or what Mr. Coley's talking about, is is what we brought up in the previous meetings that everybody was all up in arms about, not knowing about. There's major subdivisions, right? So,
major residential subdivision.
yes.
Sorry, Pat. Go ahead.
Any comment on the sewer overlay?
I did have one. I know we keep going back with, how these subdivisions are approved, and they are, it's just a matter of checking off those regulations. But we don't have zoning, so we can't necessarily choose where we put subdivisions. It's hard for the public or a neighbor to say, I don't want my neighbor to build a subdivision if they meet all of those standards. I kind of wonder if we're looking at this in a way that's maybe not what we should be doing. I think there are other options as far as density in these subdivisions, minimum lot sizes, if there's green space requirements, things like that. But all of that adds cost to those houses. So I do think we have to be careful on how we, I like the idea of public hearings, but I also don't want to give the public some sort of idea that we can say, this subdivision is coming in, they've checked all the boxes, and if I go and speak about it, they won't let it happen. Because I don't think we have, as it's written now, we can't say no. So we just have to listen to people not want it, and then we turn around and say, well, our hands are tied. So I think we have to look at what the actual subdivision looks like, how dense it can be or can't be, but we still have to weigh off the cost on housing.
Can I make a comment, sir? You're right, there can't be anything be changed, but if, let's just say if we had a public hearing and 30 neighbors show up and they sit and talk amicably with the developer and they sit down and negotiate, and developer these folks are concerned that we're gonna build 6 houses an acre, maybe we'll do the right thing and build 4. It may be just a negotiation process between two parties, regardless of what the regulation is. So, and I've seen that happen. So, but I want us to stay focused on here, what I got here. We've had a lot more comment about the public hearing than I thought we would, but was I clear on the sewer overlay part? Because I thought that would be a huge discussion, and
Is that more in regards to the density? Because I assume as we get into more sewer access, they
okay,
can
so are they interested
make these
in more
subdivisions.
information over on the sewer overlay? Am I clear what we got in mind here? So we proposed, in the unincorporated areas of the county, a certain footage, we'd work on that, away from the sewer lines, both sides, and then we would make standards within that area, different than what we have now, which was nothing. So, most of these major developments come in, or we can't use subdivision anymore. These residential developments come in because they got access to sewers. The only way they can make it work, or unless they build new ones and go further out, to another piece of parcel of property. So within just that area, we could make some standards, leaves the rest of the county as control-free or no zoning, or whatever you want to call it. But what we're proposing is just within these areas, we can come up with some standards and some building standards and codes and changes like that that would be more modern, more up-to-date, more environmentally friendly, more soil conscious, more stormwater conscious than what we have now, because we have nothing. Just minimums. I'll take that back, Tom. I don't want to say nothing. We have something, but they're very lax. So that kind of give you a little more information. I don't want, so I just need input. If the subcommittee was to meet again, can we continue this idea, and come back with some more details, or do y'all just, no, that's,
Dave, you were first.
My question is, what does the sewer have to do with it?
the sewer has a whole bunch to do with it, because they don't build these huge subdivisions or these developments on, residential sewer, on septic tanks. They only build these things in high density in areas where they have access to sewer.
Okay, so my concern is, anybody that owns property in this overlay, we're proposing to propose regulations to restrict their property rights. That's what it's coming down to.
If you want
That's
to
my
put it in those
concern.
terms. If you want to put it in those terms, you're right, yes. But we do it within an overlay, or we do it countywide. I mean, and I think that's a losing battle.
All right, one more question. So have we looked at other counties? Is that something that they do?
No,
They don't do it?
no, that I know of, nobody has an overlay just in a sewer area. Now, other counties have requirements and standards. Pickens County got, I got it right here somewhere, probably 60 or 70 pages of.
But yet we're still complaining about it easily in Pickens County.
Yeah, but you know why? Because all the development's coming our way because they have no headwinds. They can come here, it's just, the door's open, boys, come on in. And it's there's no restrictions, very little restriction, very little headwind. As Tom said, it's a check the box, go at it.
And we have a low-income and middle-income housing shortage crisis in this county.
You're correct, and if we got to that point, one of the proposals within the overlay is have an area that's could be used for that. Most of the time, low-income housing is built inside of incorporated areas, closer to city limits or inside city limits to shopping, and which we don't have a dog in that fight. So, but the market, and I don't know if Tom alluded to this or not, but anything, these people develop these things because they know what the market can stand. They know where the price point is. And right now, the price point's not in low income. So that's when the feds get involved and they see an area that has a need for low income, then they come in and give incentives to builders. Hey, we're going to buy this, we're going to pay you so much per square foot to build this, and we're going to subsidize it. So anything we do here is not really affecting, the market is the market. But we have to have some standards that at least get caught up with what the rest of the state has.
All right, can I make a request for a 5-minute break? Bathroom
Second.
break? All those in favor?
Aye.
I hear a motion to reconvene?
So moved.
Second.
Favor?
Second. In favor?
Okay,
Unanimous?
it's unanimous.
Yes.
Okay, to continue on what we're talking about, the overlay, is there any further questions? Yes, sir.
The only thing I can think of is if you continue working on the sewer overlay, would it be possible to see a map or how much land that, I know we had trouble
Yeah,
finding those, but
if
that's
we
the only.
continue on, we'll go a certain footage out, or maybe go with the lay of the land, contour of the land, it may be further out in some places, it may be closer in, But, before we got to that point, we just wanted to know, do we have the blessings of the rest of the committee to continue? Because we don't want to do a lot of research and work and, it not come in.
Excuse me, is it okay for me to say? I am having a problem understanding, the future ramifications of having something related to a sewer overlay. And I wouldn't support it. So I would think it's appropriate for me to just say, as far as the subcommittee is concerned, I wouldn't want to choose to look at a sewer overlay.
Anybody else?
I wouldn't want the committee to do extensive work, but I am intrigued as to what that would look like. Only because while our sewer is not a county-owned sewer system, it does have a different potential desire or impact area, whether it be a subdivision, restaurants, hotels, gas stations, or otherwise. Anything along that sewer corridor is going to have a different type of demand on it than other places might. And that demand also then, just like the need for a future landfill, there's going to be the potential need in the future for an expansion of that facility. So I'm not right now inclined to say, yeah, let's go forward with something like that, because there's still some land right issues involved, but I would be intrigued to see where you're coming up with and why on what you want to do.
So are you asking for a vote from us or just our opinion?
Just opinions, information on it.
I mean, I think it's worth looking into. May not work out, but it's something we, could look into and see how, if that's something that we can do. Because you're right, the subdivisions the residential housing divisions, or whatever you want to call them, are actually, that's the only place they're going right now. They're not building a 600 home area with septic tanks. They're waiting, they're getting in where the sewer lines are, which are around the towns. So it would be worth looking into and coming back maybe to us with preliminary design of some kind, or something to let us know what it looks like and how far out. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt, but before we close up our discussion, one of the things is that to me, this idea of a sewer overlay is kind of a sneaky way of putting some zoning in, and I'm wondering why the subcommittee hasn't directly chosen to come back to the committee and commission with an option of some type of zoning, because I think that's if you want to control an area in the county, that's something that is a viable way of getting what you want.
Choose my words carefully here. I always, for the record, say that I don't think nobody's heard zoning ever come out of my mouth. I am for standards. What this does, it condenses it into a little smaller area, if you want to call it zoning. It leaves the rest of the county control-free. If we put zoning on it, it goes nowhere. I'll go ahead and tell you that. Folks, I have concern about development in our county. It's out of control. I mean, it's Wild West. We are 40 years behind the rest of the state. And some of our opinions are, I'm afraid, are personal opinions. I don't think they're the opinions of this county, the residences. So, I think we need to get out get out and talk to folks, and I think you'll have a different opinion of things, what's going on. I mean, Frankie attended a meeting with me the other day that whole different genre of people were sitting in and concerned about food security. Well, we can't grow food or cattle or chickens or anything in subdivisions, guys. The county, our Tourism Commission has a statement. Now, this is not verbatim or exactly how it is, but it's basically, it says Oconee County is marketed as an outdoor destination and a recreation paradise. Our subdivision should fit into that theme. So if somebody's coming here from Atlanta to come see trees and mountains and lakes, and they got this subdivision after subdivision, we're getting away from the mission of what our Tourism Commission does. And again, I don't want to get away from the overlay thing, so I want us to come back to that. So if any more questions, I'm done, Mr. Chairman, if there's no more.
Anything further?
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Our next subject, or our next item is Oconee Soil and Water Conservation District request for inclusion in subdivision review. Mr. Winchester.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I want to withdraw my comment, and when I say that, I signed that sheet before Celia got here, our district manager, and she's going to present the request. She's already written a letter to the staff, and I'll be available to make comments, and I was going to clarify a couple of things, but I'm going to let her make the presentation for the inclusion on this preliminary review and comment process as other agencies in the county.
That's fine, sir.
Thank you.
Just please come forward and state your name for the record.
Yes, Celia Myers. I am currently the district manager for the Oconee Soil and Water Conservation District. As you see in the letter, we are requesting to be involved in the subdivision review process as is already stated in the ordinance. The section 32-222 already includes the Soil and Water Office as an entity that can be on the list to receive the subdivision plans, the preliminary plats. This is not to give opinion. This is only to assist the commission and to assist the county in providing technical advice, whether it is prime soils, whether it is impaired waterways, whether it's critical habitat. We can provide technical assistance in that way and be used as an educational arm to just help in the guiding of growth. Any other questions, I'll be happy to answer, but hopefully the letter is self-explanatory. Yes, sir.
As you found out tonight, subdivision in and of itself is simply somebody sectioning off a couple of feet of their property and giving it to their neighbor. I'm assuming that you're talking about some level of subdivision of residential homes to be built. Is there a number at which, are we talking a major subdivision that what you're wanting to make sure you're included on?
We were just going specifically with anything that has a preliminary plat turned in, as the ordinance states, then that's the one that we would be requesting. And I am very much involved and very much aware of the process. This is not my first time in front of a planning commission.
So Celia, would that, I'm sorry, I'm going
Go ahead.
to comment, sir. Would that include industrial, anything that would move trees, soil, affect the environment at all that you would have an opinion with?
Anything that has a preliminary plat or anything that the commission or staff feels that they would like to have the technical assistance of the office, we'll be happy to look at it.
So you y'all are basically asking to be one of the boxes to be checked, to get approved or subdivision?
I wouldn't say that we would check a box. We would only provide the technical advice in order for someone else to make the decision. We would not specifically check a box and say, yes, we approve this. We're only providing information that can be used.
Just a point, just, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask a question, James. Do you see any problem with this? And, this letter was written to you. I'm not sure that the commission has to have a motion and vote on this, so I want you to clear that up for me also, please, sir.
No, probably the first thing is I owe them an apology, because as it is written, they should be getting notified of these going on. And we have not done that. It had not been, I'm not sure when this office stopped doing that, but, we can absolutely start doing that again and should. It is not for, like Sheila said, a decision or a box. It is for notification. We can provide any feedback they give to us, to the developer.
Can I make a comment, sir? This could be like the public comment recommendation I have. For instance, the development over on Mountain Road, I know has got into some pretty wet areas. How they got around it, I don't know. But Celia's department could have possibly had it headed that off and made somebody aware that there's I don't want to call it a wetlands or a marsh area, or probably an area that probably shouldn't have been disturbed. So this could possibly be a way to, save some green space or save some areas that probably shouldn't be disturbed. If they were informed, hey, you might want to watch out for this. You might be running into a problem here. But if they don't know, they're just going to keep on going. So,
Since it is in our ordinance, do we need to make a motion, or is it something that you can just start doing again?
You're welcome to you can make a motion on something that already exists as well, so I can confirm as staff that will happen. You're also welcome to make a motion.
I want to just make a quick comment that the Conservation District in years past was on the list for review of subdivision preliminaries. And the Sewer Authority, which I retired from, we were on the list, and it was like clockwork. Every subdivision came in, and it was primarily a pollution control issue. If they didn't have sewer access, they would have to get septic tanks, and the Sewer Authority would sign off on that. It was in the preliminary review process, whether it was on sewer or septic tanks. So our role here, of course, again, Celia's already said this, prime soils, conservation, flood control, erosion control. We manage 8 watershed flood control lakes in the county. But anyway, just to get back on the list and be copied with and given the opportunity to make comments, review the process and make a few comments, and not to stop the process at all, or have a box checked. I think she said that, approval or disapproval. But thank you for allowing us to be here. And I think the letter's pretty clear.
Randy, anything?
I got questions for staff. James, once somebody submits a development plan, is it 60 days that we have to, for all of the process?
So it depends on which section they're in. We give some comments back a lot earlier if it's just on a sketch or on a limit. So we also encourage people to come in and talk to us before their application. So we kind of can give them the regulations they gotta follow. We basically have a checklist, and I think y'all have seen that before, of what they need to submit for each stage of their approvals. But yeah, 60 days is the maximum time we have to give initial comments. That's not for an approval, that is for comments to go back out. So it's the review.
Just for clarity, it seems that James is agreeable to communicating, and so he says he's going to do it. I believe him, and I guess he'll answer your letter appropriately. I don't think there's a need for a motion. That's my personal opinion.
That's up to y'all. We'll follow the ordinance.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
we have commercial.
Could I just make a quick comment, please? I just wanted to say how much I appreciate the work that you and your group is doing. It's, when it comes to the environment of our community, there's really nothing that is more important. That's, when it comes to having people like yourself working day in and day out, it makes a huge difference, and if you weren't there, it would make a huge difference too. So appreciate the work you're doing.
I agree with you 100%.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All righty. Let's go to commercial junkyards. We have the infamous Mr. Nix.
I'd like on something. All right. Been studying this back and forth. We've kicked it around up here, I don't know how many times. We've had subcommittee meetings, stuff like that. We finally figured out, it's going to commercial. All right. Thing is, we have junkyards and tow yards in Oconee County. I know most of them. They have a junkyard and a tow yard at the same facility. On something like that, you need to probably put a amount of cars that you can have on the lot or something like that. My lot, I'm pushing to get 50 cars in. If you stick a tractor trailer in there, you're looking about 30. I mean, a lot of times if your insurance company is coming in and it's rotating your stock, your inventory is rotating in and out all the time. It's always a revolving door. So as soon as we take possession of them through Oconee County Magistrate Court, they're going to the scrapyard. We don't store them or nothing like that. There is a couple of junkyards / tow yards in Oconee County that has, I would probably say, somewhere between 100 to 300 cars. And in this ordinance, the businesses that is already established in Oconee County, are you gonna make them come to a certain criteria, or are you gonna grandfather them in?
Anyone like to answer that?
Come on.
Well, I can say this, is that when we were talking about it in the subcommittee,
Yeah.
we were talking about grandfathering in, and then anything else that were to be created in the future be restricted.
That's what we have talked about.
But I mean, someone could have taken the opposite view and didn't voice it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's one of the things that was
Yeah.
discussed.
But I know I've lived in Oconee County my whole life. I've worked towing and crane service here in Oconee County my whole life. And I've seen Oconee County say they're gonna do this in the fire service. They're gonna do this, and they go that way.
Well, it could be done where we set a standard, say, this, for your example, say 50 cars.
Yeah.
And you, at your particular facility, you have 75. We can just tell you, you're stuck at 75.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
can't go over that. If you go over that, then you get in trouble. We're gonna
Yeah.
slap you on the hand. But, whatever, any new facility would be at the 50 mark.
yeah. I mean, I couldn't get 75 cars unless I started stacking them on top of each other. Take the crane, just chunk. But, I mean, my point is, for the ones that's established in Oconee County, that's been here for years, the company I work for, I manage, have been in business since 1976. There's some others that's not been in this business as long, and there'll be others that come along. But the ones that are in business standards right now, are they gonna be grandfathered or have to meet the requirements?
I would say they'd be grandfathered in, but just have maybe standards say, listen, you're grandfathered in, you don't have to, but whatever you have right now, you can't go over that limit. You have to
Yeah.
keep it. So if you got
But Travis, the honest truth is, we don't know. I mean,
Until we come up and get some numbers, we wouldn't know exactly how to answer that 100%.
but could we ask a question, and what would be your opinion? Which way should it be?
For the businesses that is in Oconee County that is established, works with Highway Patrol, county, city, whatever, those, all right, I'm going all the way across the board now. I ain't gonna, there's a couple out there I'd like to pull out, but I'm not. I'm going across the board. All right. You got this many cars, okay. Put a quantity on them that you can have. Our lot, like I said, I could possibly get 50 in at the most. That's packing them in like cordwood. The quantity's not gonna matter. There's other lots out here that's got lots, 2 and 3 acre lots. But the ones that's been in business for so long and has a good standing with the county and stuff like that, grandfather them in.
Make a comment, Travis, too?
Yeah.
I think it needs to come down to a square footage thing.
Yep.
So many cars for so many square foot,
Mhm.
their footage. I don't think anybody's looking probably to expand, mostly because of cost.
Yep.
Like, you know, I wouldn't think Tal or your company you work for wants to expand just because they just know where to go. So I think if we do a recommendation here, gentlemen, that just needs to come down to square footage, or how many cars you can have on square footage. I know they deal with red tape about insurance getting there, and, you know, sometimes you'll sit on a car for a long, long time. If it's in litigation, you know, it sits there a long, long time.
7 months.
Yeah, so, you know, you gotta take all that into consideration, but, I think, no established business in this county should be in fear of we're gonna change anything to negatively affect you. Cause this is a needed business and a needed industry, and there's fine folks run it. And, I wouldn't vote for anything that would inhibit anything y'all do.
I just know I've had other dealings throughout the county and different services and stuff like that, and I know how.
But what you gotta remember from our commission here is all we do is make recommendations.
Oh, yes, I know.
It goes on, so.
And like I told y'all before, I'll help y'all any way I can, stuff like that.
And Travis, you have been a good help to us. I appreciate your willingness to continue to come and speak your voice. It makes a difference.
And any questions or comments or anything?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming out.
Thank you, Travis.
Aye.
All right, it is open for discussion by the commission.
It seems like the only thing we would be discussing, Mr. Chairman, it would be if if the established businesses are grandfathered in, which I don't know that, James may have more input on that. I don't think, something that's already going, we can't stop it. I mean, or regulate it to death where it can't operate already. Now, we may have anything coming up. And it's odd that we brought up junkyards, because I have had a couple of comments on one that's just recently opened over on, Travis, is that on Seed Farm Road over there behind Upstate Forklift?
Yeah. Right.
Had several adjacent property owners ring me up and, hey, how'd y'all let this do? And I use my words I use all the time, we control free. Well, what does that mean? So I said, well, that means those folks can have a junkyard right there, and so can you. And so, you know, if we put something out there, you know, it has to be just business related as far as square footage, so many cars per square foot. We need to do some homework on that.
Mr. Garland, did the subcommittee have anything before it was disbanded? Did it have any recommendations or any ideas about how to go about this?
Just what I reported through the meetings, which I admit that everything I've shared is not completely exhaustive, because it would take, you know, as much time as the meeting would be to say everything that was there. So, one thing I know as far as point of order is that for us to continue to discuss this, we need to have a motion. And I don't think anybody's ready to have a motion, so we may want to table this or put on the agenda next time if somebody has a motion they want to make.
Can I ask staff to do some research when you get a minute on junkyard ordinances in other counties and send to every one of us, give us something to start with and look at, especially Pickens and Anderson. I'm not sure what Greenville has, but that'll give us and any other counties throughout the state that are about our size.
So we've already put together, I think it's 9 counties, junkyard ordinances into a PDF. We gave to the subcommittee. I can send that.
Could you send that out to us? That would,
If you want, are you looking at just a starting point?
give us a starting point to look at some other ordinances and other things and see where we want to go with this. Okay? Is that okay with? Okay, if we don't have anything else, Mr. Johnson, I'm gonna turn the meeting completely over to you.
Excellent. I'm going to stand up there if I may.
You got it. While you're doing your walk, Mr. Markovich, if you'd like to.
I'm signed up, but to be honest, I just assume Mike do his part first and let me, I've got some comments on the roads that are very specific, but I really want to hear what Mike's got.
We should be able to.
I'm trying to understand where he's coming from.
Okay, that's, okay, all right.
Okay.
Or I can drive for you if you want me to. I'm happy to do it either way.
Why don't you do that for me? Otherwise, I may roll too many times here.
And your whiteboard's right there, but yes.
Okay. Maybe I won't need it. We'll see. Hopefully, we can work off of what I've got here. And if we need to get another monitor, if you want to look on there.
Lose a couple inches.
Gary, you can sit in Mike's seat. He's got a monitor right here if that would be helpful for you.
We can share. I can
Okay.
see it from here. Thank you.
There were several things that were taking place in past months that brought this to my attention. And then in doing some additional research, it really came about that I think that we've got something happening that shouldn't be happening within our ordinances. But before I get started, I want to make it clear that the views conveyed in this presentation are my own. These views are not necessarily reflective of the views of the county or the planning commission. I'm also not an attorney nor pretend to be, so I'm offering my opinion as a citizen. But I hope to provide information regarding a change to the private road ordinance 26.2B2 and 26.2C2, specifically talking about a 50-foot right-of-way on private roads and how that looks compared to a 50-foot right-of-way on public roads. So the presentation objective is to show samples of property potentially negatively affected by our current ordinance, show how our current ordinance affects potentially hundreds of owners in the county, show where the county has adopted roads, county-maintained roads with less right-of-way requirement than we're requiring on private property, and then to show how residents over the years have perfectly and easily had ingress and egress on private roads that have less than a 50-foot right-of-way. So, next slide. From the Oconee County Roads and Bridges website, it appears, and it may have been, there's 2 different dates, and I can't tell from the highlighted areas what was changed when, but there were several changes made in July 2013, which took private road ordinances and seemed to do a cut and paste from public roads. And while the intent is not clear, specifically with regard to the 50-foot right-of-way, I think there's an issue. So 26-2, the very first statement of that ordinance says Oconee County shall have no responsibility for nor control of design, engineering, construction, inspection, or maintenance of private driveways, drives, roads in Oconee County, and shall only be involved with private driveways, drives, and roads to enforce these regulations. So the very first paragraph talks about that Oconee County doesn't really want to be involved in these private drives, roads, driveways. But let me kind of break that down on the next slide. A private driveway serves no more than 3 residential dwellings. Private drives serve no more than 3 to 10 or 4 to 10, but it does have a driving surface of 20 foot wide and does have a 50-foot right-of-way on your private property or private drives. Private roads services more than the 10 residential dwellings, still has 20 foot of road surface, has a 50-foot right-of-way. Going to the next slide. Take this and compare it to public under 26-3. The public roads still have a 20-foot driving surface, 50-foot right-of-way. They call them a little different things. Instead of drives and roads, we've got minor, local, and major, local, and collector, and things like that. But it's still this 20-foot of driving surface, 50-foot of right-of-way. So it's completely reasonable on public drives and public roads to contain a right-of-way. Whether it's for county maintenance, future utilities, emergency shoulders, water control, etc. But we're talking about private roads. I mean, just imagine going down a county road if the asphalt trucks are lined up to fill potholes and the little old lady out there going, get off my grass, get off my grass. So it's completely understandable why on public roads we have this 15 foot off the side of the pavement need to be there. Also, if there's a need for an emergency stop or to change a tire, we might need that on public roads. But the next slide. But these examples don't have any application on private property. I mean, if you get a flat tire in your gated community or small subdivision or driving down your private drive, chances are your neighbor's going to bring you a glass of tea and ask if they can help change your tire. If you're 400 feet from home, you're not necessarily going to need an emergency lane or 15 feet off the shoulder to do something. So regarding maintenance, there's a high likelihood that you're going to get your tractor out and grade the gravel because, again, it's a private road on private property. It may be a gravel road that you simply need to grade the gravel. But in any event, if you do need an asphalt truck, you're going to hire the contractor. It's a private road. You're just going to let everybody know that's on that private road, hey, we're coordinating the parking of these asphalt trucks while they're paving today. Going down to the next slide. The private road ordinance says that on your survey, on your private property, that it contain the following wording on the survey. The road right-of-way shown on this plat shall be private drives or private roads in the case of a bigger private subdivision, not owned, maintained, or supervised by Oconee County, and were not constructed pursuant to any plans for future acceptance by Oconee County. Road right-of-way shown upon this plat shall not be accepted for maintenance by Oconee County at any time in the future unless constructed in accordance with all the adopted Oconee County regulations. In short, the county is telling private property owners who subdivide their property for more than 3 parcels that they must give up 15 feet on either side of their driving surface for something that the county has no plans on getting involved with. So going to the next slide. Again, private driveways, 3 residential dwellings. Private drives, 4 to 10. Private roads, 11 or more. Now here's the thing. Understand that a residential dwelling, it's not a 911 address. A residential dwelling is if you have a main house and you have a garage apartment and you have a bunkhouse in the barn, you're already hit year 3. If you've got 20 acres with those structures on there, you can't go subdivide your property anymore to give land to your grandchild or your kids or anything else if you have less than 50 feet of access into your property. So let me go to some slides to show you just a handful. If you'll click the next slide. This person has 23 feet of access to their acreage. Next slide. This person has 34 feet of access to their acreage. Next slide. 42 feet of access to their property. Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure we're clear on that. Unless they go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, like,
Unless they go ask for permission from the county, they cannot subdivide their property more than 3 times because they don't have a 50-foot right-of-way. Next slide. This person here, I don't know how well people can see it, but this road right here already has 2 properties on it. If this guy puts a bathroom and a kitchen in his barn, this guy can't subdivide his land. He's done. Or if this guy chooses to build a second dwelling and give part of the land to his grandkids before this guy does, he can't subdivide it. He's done. 3 residential dwellings in that 24 feet because there's not a 50-foot right-of-way. Next slide. This road is a 38-foot right-of-way. There are currently 3 houses on it. When this guy and this guy go to build, they're going to be sorely mistaken because there's already 3 properties on that area. So we've got an issue that now, truth be known, this guy's probably grandfathered in some form or fashion, or at least the BZA would see him as the county created something that wasn't the intent when he did his property. But according to our regulations, those 2 guys can't build on their property because there's already 3 homes. Next slide. This person has 140 acres but a 34-foot pinch point. They can't subdivide their property more than 3 times. Or they can't put more than 3 dwellings on that 140 acres. Next slide. This property, 146 acres. It's got a 32-foot access and a 27-foot access. They don't have the 50-foot right-of-way. They can't subdivide their property. They can't even, and I say subdivide it, they can't put 3 dwellings with bathrooms and kitchens. So, next slide. There's properties all over the county, and these are just a few examples where people have given themselves an access point and sold off the front half to different people, and now they can't give land to their kids, they can't subdivide their property, or they couldn't sell it to anybody. Next slide. So that's the first reason that this was, I think, is wrong. Second reason, there's hundreds or thousands potentially of property owners in the county that do have 50-foot right-of-ways to get into their property. But consider that you're limiting the rights of private property owners when you have a right-of-way requirement. So next slide. Let's look at the public roads ordinance and to see how it defines right-of-way. In the right-of-way for public roads, it says the entire right-of-way shall be cleared of all stumps, roots, brush, and other objectionable material. All tree stumps, trees, and other vegetation shall be removed. The entire right-of-way shall be gravelled. So 15 feet on either side of the surface is not really yours to do with what you want. It's the county has a right to define what that looks like.
Did you mean to say graded? You said gravel, but you said you meant graded.
Graded, I'm sorry, graded, yep. Flipping to the next slide, what this means is if somebody has 100 acres there, they're giving up, they've got 20 feet of road surface, which again is needed for fire safety, fire trucks getting in and out, ambulance getting in and out, and two-way traffic. Yeah, I get that. But you're giving up on a private road on private property an additional 15 feet on either side of that road for something that the county really says we're never going to step foot on, but you can't do anything with it. In other words, don't put up a horse fence on the side of that. Don't plant shrubs. Don't do stuff that we might come in and decide that we don't want because it's objectionable. Next slide, the third issue regarding this. Just this year, the county adopted the maintenance of several private roads within the subdivision of Waterside Crossing. It was an appeal through the BZA from the HOA that said, hey, please take over our private roads. These private roads had a 40-foot right-of-way rather than the county's 50-foot right-of-way. So by the county taking over these roads with a 40-foot right-of-way, what the county is saying is that we're willing to do something on county roads that we won't let you do on your own private property. Because on private property, they want a 50-foot right-of-way. Next slide. So the fourth issue that throughout Oconee County, it exists many private roads built with significantly less than 50-foot right-of-ways. In fact, many communities in the county wouldn't exist and look the way they look if they were required to have built those subdivisions with a 50-foot right-of-way. Each of these private property owners in each of these communities has navigated ingress and egress to their homes for years using that 20 foot of road surface and something less than 50 foot of right-of-way. Here's a few subdivision examples. Beacon Shores, Harbor Oaks, The Summit, Waterford Point, Waterside Crossing are just a few examples of the Oconee County neighborhoods that contain private roads with less than 50 foot of right-of-way. So I Googled right-of-way and easements are not the same thing. I Googled what an easement is, and according to Google, an easement is an agreed-upon use of land for someone other than the landowner. But a right-of-way, while being a type of easement, may allow anyone to pass through a portion of property as though it was public land. So according to Google, private roads on private property with a 50-foot right-of-way may allow anyone to pass through that portion of property as though it was public land, according to that definition. So let me give one last thing, because we just went through developments, and this to me really brings it home. I have heard people say, well, this controls development, or is a mechanism to control development. And I'm here to say it absolutely doesn't do that. That's not what it does. It penalizes owners is what it does. But if you'll go to the next slide. Oh, and it's really hard to see, but I'm going to say that this is a 25-acre parcel with a pinch point. This is a 25-acre parcel with 300 or 400 feet of road frontage. We're going to call this guy Grandpa Joe, and we're going to call this John Doe. But let's say that both owners have 25 acres. Grandpa Bill there has owned his land for 30 years. He's got a local builder friend who wants to buy the land and put up 12 to 15 houses on it. Grandpa Bill sees an opportunity to help out his family and maybe pay for the grandkids to start college. The builder friend loves the lands, but starts looking into the Oconee County rules and regs and discovered that it doesn't have a 50-foot access, which is required to put in those 12 to 15 homes. So although the builder enjoys, is friends with Grandpa Joe and loves the area, he goes and approaches John Doe because John Doe can give him the 50-foot access point, and he makes John Doe an offer he can't refuse and buys the land. In other words, the developer is going to find a place to build if he wants to build in that area. All we've done is penalized a property owner here because he didn't have the 50-foot requirement to get into his property so that he could sell it to a developer. Matter of fact, whether it's a developer or just, again, dividing the land for his kids or grandkids in the future, he can't do it because of this 50-foot right-of-way. So it's a real-life situation. I'm not sure why it was put into place. It's almost as if we took the public road ordinance and rubber stamped them and copy-paste into a private road ordinance. We have things within the private road ordinance that are necessary. Again, 20 foot of surface area for emergency vehicles and things like that to come and go. But we don't need this extra space on the side of the road on private property, on a private road, simply because it's private. We don't need the county saying you can't do anything with this part of your land. So, flipping to the last slide, one more. So in review, it's clearly reasonable for public roads to have a 50-foot right-of-way. It's clearly reasonable for private roads to have a 20-foot wide surface for fire, safety, et cetera, et cetera. It's not reasonable, and I've heard this argument made that, well, you need to have utilities there. Well, I may have 100 acres and the electricity is being brought in from a completely different avenue other than that corridor to get in. Or I may have 50 acres with a well and I don't need water. So it's not a matter of utilities being in there. So it's unreasonable to have the county say you got to hold 15 feet on either side of the road for utilities when a property owner might get their water from the well and the electricity from a completely different inbound area. If the owner needs to do that, then yeah, the owner needs to plan for that. But heck, you look at Kiwi Key, they put the utilities right under the road. So a developer can figure out, if that's what they're going to do, an owner can figure out how to get utilities in. But we shouldn't be penalizing property owners for their use simply because they don't have that 50-foot right-of-way on private property. It's unreasonable for the county to restrict the owner's use of private land due to the right-of-way requirements. And then lastly, it's unreasonable that a property owner who has a main house, a garage apartment for a teenager, can't one day give that teenager a section of land to put their own house on when they've been driving in and out of that same driveway for years while they were growing up, if there's multiple kids. So I hope to have shown that the ordinance restricts private property owners the right to subdivide their land due to this right-of-way restriction. And I want to let Tom Markovich talk, but I'm going to be making a motion that the 50-foot right-of-way portion be removed from the private road ordinance. And I'd like to ask that this presentation and a letter or the blessings for me to go give this presentation to the Transportation Committee of County Council, which is my understanding of the next step to get this removed. So that's the presentation.
Tom?
Thank you. I appreciate this presentation very much. And I can tell you where the private road requirements came from. It actually goes back to 2008. And actually, the Home Builders Association and I sued the county over a road ordinance. And it had to do with the upgrade of the roads. We worked through the process for several years. And as we were getting closer to coming into a settlement on the whole process, we were in conversations with my attorneys. We were in conversations with the county and their attorney at the time. And they wanted private roads to have the same standards as the public roads. Reason being is because in the past, we've had quite a few different road ordinances here, okay? We had some back in the 70s, 75.5, 75.6, and then for years we operated what was known as 8214. That was the rule of the roads. And, you know, they changed over time. And then in somewhere around 2002, about the time Tom Hendricks came here from Pickens County, Tom decided he was going to be the road king, and it was all up to him no matter what. And so that went on until he came up with the idea of the upgrade requirements for subdivisions. And so when we got down to trying to settle the lawsuit, we came up with the idea of having a provision to upgrade a county road and how it would become paid for and all that sort of stuff. Well, the other thing the county wanted was because in the past, a lot of developers had subdivided properties and the roads were approved and platted, but for some odd reason, the roads never got paved. Now, every homeowner was certain that they were promised that their roads were going to be paved. Whether they were promised or not, they were certain that they were. That was always the case, okay? So, the county did not want to continue to be caught in that because they were constantly having homeowners on unpaved roads come and say, hey, the developer promised this was going to be paved, it's never been paved, we need the county to take this over. Well, the county couldn't take it over because it didn't meet the requirements. Didn't have the right of way. Sometimes there's sewer under the road, sometimes water lines under the road. It could be any number of things. So they simply wanted for the standards in a private road to be the same as a public in case the county ever had to take the road over. Now, I think it's interesting that they took over the roads in Waterside Crossing, which only had the 40-foot right-of-way, and they granted the easement. See, I don't think, I have issues with this whole idea of the zoning board of appeals being able to grant a variance from a road standard. That's stupid, okay? Everybody, it's stupid, okay? What does the zoning board of appeals know about road requirements? They don't. They don't know it from anything. Anyway, nonetheless, I did not want to agree to allowing private roads to come into the public standards for the very simple reason, just as you said, private roads are private. Where they were getting into issues was, especially with the Crescent subdivisions, when you go out, if you've ever ridden around in the Crescent subdivisions and you go out on a long finger, and more than likely, you're gonna see a sign before you get too far that says private road. And it's because it couldn't get in the lot count where they needed to be, because the road right-of-way wasn't gonna meet the county standard. So what they did was just make that section of road private. There used to be another ordinance that said we couldn't have another road right beside another, one that was within, I forget what the distance was, 200 or 300 feet. So the new road had to be private. And so just a lot of things like that, caused all of a sudden the county to say, really what we need to do is to have the same standards, and so that if anything ever happens and this road has to be taken over, then it'll at least meet the requirements. And we finally agreed to it. I didn't want to, but we did, just to get the lawsuit settled. And so that's where it comes from. Now, I have issues with coming back and, like I said, accepting these roads just by granting a variance, saying, yeah, close enough. No, it's not close enough at all. And because if it was close enough, then all these private roads that were already private roads should remain so. And but that wasn't the case. So I'm not sure how to get. I know exactly what you're talking, but I really am concerned about. It seems like there needs to be some standard even for the private, because in some cases you could have a road that ends up becoming a public road. Now, maybe what they should have done in Waterside Crossing is gone back and said, all right, each homeowner, you're giving it 5 feet here and 5 feet here, and instead of a 40-foot right-of-way, now that's become a 50-foot right-of-way. Maybe that's what they should have had to cede in order to become, I don't know. But that's for sure a situation where a road is becoming a public road, entirely different from a private road situation. So, yeah.
A public road, I know it says a private road serves a minimum of 11 lots. What's the maximum that a private road can serve?
I don't know that there is.
There's not a maximum, no. We've got subdivision in Kiwi, that's all private roads that services over 2,000 lots. So
This is my question.
The biggest thing is, if it's behind gates, it's a private road. County's not gonna do it. It's also on the survey, shall not. Shall means a very important thing in legal language. It shall not be turned over to the county unless these other things are additionally met. Well, that seems pretty clear. If you think you want to turn it over in the future to the public, then you're going to make sure you have a 50-foot right-of-way, and you're not going to be doing what these folks have done to their land, which is build a driveway in and sell land off on either side, because these people are being penalized. And there's tons of them all over the county where they cannot subdivide their land and give it to their kids, their grandkids, or otherwise, because they've already got 3 residential structures on there already. They can't give it to the 4th because of that 50-foot right-of-way. That doesn't need to be there. Again, curb to curb is 20 feet. The fire truck doesn't need side property. Matter of fact, you go into any of these subdivisions around here, and I can assure you there are mailboxes and trees and shrubbery and flowers and stones and everything else in the county's right-of-way where a fire truck or ambulance isn't going to be pulling off into the grass anyway. What we're concerned about is road depth, road construction, road surface, 20-foot wide access. But beyond that, it's my private property. It's my private property. So,
I would just leave you to this one little thing, and it's very important to the discussion too, because in fact, it used to be that if you platted a piece of property and you had platted on there right away, years ago, before the Comprehensive Planning Act, developers used to do it all the time. Not good developers, just some developers. But anyway, you plat out the property, you put right away on there, go get the thing recorded. And the minute you put a public vehicle on that road and went down that road, it became public, period. That used to be. It's not the case anymore. Now, in order for a road to be public, it takes an action by in this case, the county administrator is allowed to approve roads into the system, but it has to meet all the requirements. But it has to be a positive act. You can't just willy-nilly have something recorded and all of a sudden it becomes a public road. That does not happen, cannot happen by law. So, anyway, it's a dilemma. There's no question about it. Like I said, I never wanted to agree to that a long time ago, but it was a part of the settlement, and the county's argument was a reasonable argument in the sense of, what if this road does become a public road in the future? And so, anyway, I don't know.
Thank you, Tom, for all your input. You all saw where there were roads that obviously didn't have a 50-foot right-of-way that already had structures on them, and if this neighbor builds or subdivides before that neighbor does, then that neighbor can't. I don't think that's right. I think it's as simple as on the private roads, not public roads, but on the private roads, that we remove that 50-foot right-of-way requirement. Yes, sir.
So are you proposing that we remove in section 26.2 Bravo, item number 2, and then in section 26.2 Charlie, item number 2?
Correct.
So what is this on 26.2 Bravo, item number 2, for the private drive? What does it mean, or an appropriately executed private roadway easement as defined by these regulations? What does that mean?
I'm going to let you answer it officially, but an easement, again, is an agreement of ingress and egress across property that's not necessarily yours, different than a right-of-way.
Do we I guess what I'm getting at is, do we need to strike just to have a minimum road right-of-way of 50 feet?
I'm going to say
Or strike the whole thing?
I'm going to say we strike 2 on each one of those. The first one, the entirety of 2, have a minimum road right-of-way of 50 feet or an appropriately executed private road easement as defined by these regulations. I think we can scratch that entire sentence. And then interestingly, the bigger one doesn't have that second part. It just says road right-of-way of 50 feet. It didn't finish complete the thought. But I'd like to make a motion that those 2 items be removed and that we send this as a letter of recommendation up to the Transportation Committee along with this presentation.
Second.
And I'd like to, if they would have me up there, give this presentation and answer questions.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I got some discussion. Playing devil's advocate here, Mr. Johnson. What if we're talking about private property rights? Those folks probably chose to put that 20-foot right-of-way in 20, 30, 40 years ago. So now we're going to change it to a 50-foot one and make them put a 50-foot one in?
No, there's a 50-foot one in now, and I'm saying it shouldn't be there.
But you're also, to be clear, I think what his question is that you've got someone who owns something, he's got 20 foot, and you're saying, well, now he's requiring 50. Well, based on your information, sometimes they don't have additional land to offer for the right-of-way. Are you following me?
I don't think that y'all are following me. What I'm saying on these houses that have a 24-foot wide access point, they can't subdivide their property based on our county's requirement of them needing 50 feet.
Well, I think
They couldn't even do it on 30 foot.
They couldn't do it on 30. Unless they have 50 feet access to their property, they cannot subdivide it more than 3 times. And not only subdivide it, they can't build a garage apartment.
Dave.
Would it help if you explained the example that we just went through here recently with John's Marine and Andy Lee?
I hate to use that because it was so controversial in ways that people were confused about. But it was two property owners, and they had to go in front of the BZA because the access point was only 32 feet instead of 50 feet. Had nothing to do, we heard everything from, oh, well, a fire truck can't get there. It had nothing to do with the fire truck. The road's still 20 foot, just like anywhere else. Actually, the county roads are oftentimes 18 feet, for the record. It was still a 20-foot wide road. So it should not have ever gone in front of the BZA because it should not have ever shown up on here. The problem is that it's not about that particular case. It's about dozens of cases from Mountain Rest down to Fairplay of people that don't have 50-foot access to their house. And they live on their property, and the grandmother lives on the property, and the brother lives on the property, and now somebody wants to subdivide so that their kids can have a piece of their 100 acres, and they can't do it because they don't have 50 feet on private property.
I got a question. What business is it of the counties, other than the 20 foot, to have any right of way? Because they're never gonna be down there parked on the side of the road maintaining anything. I mean, I can see that, like you said, the 20 foot, I can see that. Make sure it's fire trucks, ambulances, or whatever it needs to get to these residents. But that's private property. Why does he have to have a right of way at all?
I don't think he should. I think it should be curb to curb. We need road depth, because if a developer did build and he just put some little pretty asphalt down that was an inch thick and he sold all his property off down there, and then the first construction truck that rolled in there broke all the asphalt up, that shouldn't happen. I mean, there's a consumer protection element. So the road depths and construction and everything which is addressed should stay addressed. It's simply a curb to curb issue once you get off of the road itself.
Now, I've got a road going into my house that's curb to curb. County thinks they have a right of way, but they don't. It's end of pavement to end of pavement. Goes from Coffee Road to my property line, and that's it. They don't have any right-of-way easements or nothing else, but yet all those utilities are right down the side of the road on other people's properties. Matt?
Have a minimum road wide way of 50 feet. It's already on here, correct?
That is what is on there now, and we're
Okay.
asking to remove that.
You're asking to remove that.
That is my motion, is to remove that 50-foot right-of-way requirement, which is 15 feet on either side of the pavement.
Okay,
The
so
county is saying you can't use of your own property. Kind of,
where
sort of.
does plat review, title search, why wasn't all this brought up prior to the sale of this property or the purchase of this property, that
Well, these
your right of way don't
These ordinances are newer ordinances, but in many cases it existed, these ordinances were newer than the properties themselves. But at the same time, don't forget, that's just one example. There's also the example of somebody that does have 100 feet or 200 feet or whatever. But if they want to start subdividing land off to their family or friends or kids or otherwise, they are telling people on their private property that they are willing to give the county 15 feet on either side of that road, based on our current ordinance. Control of 15 feet on either side of the road.
To be honest, I'm kind of glad that's there. Let me give you
For
my
what
example.
purpose?
I lived on a gravel road, a county gravel road, that there was 9 or 10 houses down the road. I was the last house on the road. Well, in order for the county to pave that road, we had to give up 15 feet on each side.
Was it a county road?
Yes, it was. It county,
This is not a county road. How many acres do you have?
where I live,
Mhm.
1.5 acres.
1.5.
But I had to give
So-
up 15 feet of my property because a neighbor across the road didn't want to give up 15 feet, but I was happy to.
But that was a
So-
county road. Again, that's a county road. We're talking about private roads on your
But
private property.
But we brought up being able to turn them over to the county.
But see, it says clearly on every survey that on your private property, on your survey, it says that it will not be, shall not be is actually the words used. It shall not be turned over to the county unless these other things take place. such as a 50-foot, to meet the other county requirements. It's also about the depth of the concrete or the depth of the gravel. It's also about the width of the road. It's also about the how the grading is done, the water, the culverts, the everything else, if you're going to turn it over to the county. But you're never going to turn over something behind the gates. If I've got 100 acres and a gate to my 100 acres and I want to give it to 3 of my grandkids, I can't do it under this current condition unless I have 50 feet and am willing to give the county the right to control 15 feet on either side of that curb.
I want to make it clear.
Or you take it to the BZA.
Or you have to go in front of a committee that gives you permission to do with your own land what you would like to do with your own land.
I did, sir, Mike, I want to make sure I'm clear that I'm not disputing what you want to do.
No.
I'm just kind of clarification. What Tom brought up was, in some of these subdivisions on the lake, in the lake overlay, which should be more critiqued than anything, we got substandard roads. They're not wide enough.
No, that is not correct. The road is wide enough. The roads are the width of the roads. That's a given across the board. It's the amount of land in your front yard that we're talking about. If it's your private 100 acres, you're giving the county 15 feet on either side of the road on your private property if you want to subdivide it more than 3 times, put more than 3 dwellings on it. So the road's the
I've
road.
got authority to speak.
The road's the road.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was going to see what Tom had to say.
Wait.
There may be a solution. We ran into a very similar type thing that happened with side setbacks on lots. Particularly, I'm thinking of subdivisions like Port Bash. Port Bash, we got lots down there that probably aren't 25 feet wide, and you got side setbacks that are 10 feet on each side, so what are you left with? 5 feet. Yeah, that'll make a nice house. Went back and worked on the subdivision requirements, and we put a proviso in there that if the lots were subdivided or, the property was subdivided before a certain point in time when these came into effect, then there was a different standard for that. And it might be able to do the same thing for the roads, to go back and say, look, these properties were developed prior to this happening. And so there needs to be a proviso added in there to allow them to, they still need to meet some sort of minimum standard, but to allow them to be able to go ahead and develop or do something, and that it would only apply to, let's say, new roads in new subdivisions. In other words, if somebody's had that. So I think there's a way to maybe work where you're going.
And I appreciate it, but I disagree. Again, it's private property. It's private roads. I've built the road, I've poured the gravel. I shouldn't give up 15 feet on either side of that road that I can't put a horse fence down because the county says you got to have 15 feet for us, even though we're never going to come look at it, because it says we shall not come look at it unless you want to turn it over. And if you're going to turn it over, you've got to meet these other standards. If you think you're going to turn it over, make it to those other standards. But if you're never going to turn it over, if I've got a gate and I've got a horse fence and I've got a tack room barn and I've got a garage apartment and I want to divide off a couple of acres for the grandchild, when I've got 3 residential structures already, I should be able to do that without tearing down my horse fence. It's private property. It's as simple as removing the 50 feet. Everything else talks about the safety. The depth of the road, the width of the road, all of those things are covered completely in here, and even more so, because it says if you want to turn it over to the public, you got to meet these extra things as well. But there should be no reason why there's this 15 feet on either side of the pavement. So I'd like to make that motion. We've already made the motion. Have a second.
Second. So, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. I'm gonna make one more comment, that may be out of order or whatever, but I agree. This is private property, and the county has no right to tell a private property owner that you've got to give me 30 foot of your property you can't do anything with. You can't plant trees, roses, flowers, you can't let squirrels have a little playground on it, because we want that property, but yet we're never gonna come on it. We're never gonna do anything. So hopefully, the committee we're sending it to will see that and make the right decision. They will have me and Mr. Johnson talking to him.
Can
Anybody
we
else?
draft a letter then that we would sign to send to the Transportation Committee, asking for them to review this and asking for us to give a presentation on it?
Yeah, so that was actually my question to you, is to clarify your motion on what that motion was to do. So it is to stricken, but
So the motion is that we would like to see 26.2B2 and 26.2C2 be removed from the ordinance. And as such, we would like to send a letter of this recommendation to the Transportation Committee of County Council, along with a request to give this presentation to them and answer questions as to why we want to do this.
Can I provide a recommendation to Mr. Johnson? In your presentation, what I would recommend is to include maybe a slide of private drives and private roads with a strike through of what we want to get rid
Of what we want to get rid of, the two lines that we want to get rid of, okay? Yep.
At the end of your presentation, you say, here's what I propose.
Do we need to make a motion saying that we want Mike to present this?
he included that. So what I have right now is a letter to the Transportation Committee and a presentation at the meeting.
All right. If there's no further business, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Can I make one comment? I'm
You
sorry.
can, sir.
I'm still not clear on the subdivision committee or subdivision development standards. Do we need to come back with another proposal, or do I need to dissolve that committee? What's your?
Personally, I think there's a ton of discussion out there about how much development is happening. And while I think people have the right to develop, I think developers are willing to, if it's black and white on what they need to do, they're willing to do those things. What developers are not willing to do is spend $50,000 and then have to go in front of a BZA committee to plead and beg, can I do something? If it's in black and white, it's typically something that they either make the decision on, are we willing to do this expense, or are we not willing to do this expense, but they know it before they've spent anything. So I think and I've not read the development standards, but if you feel like that the development standards are lacking, I would definitely be willing to see what you're talking about at this group.
So are we saying these density standards that's in the Pickens County development standards are not off the table? Is that what we're saying?
What's the question again?
You handed me this paper on Pickens County. It's got density standards for developments. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are we saying that's not off the table?
I just handed you that because you asked me about what do you do with if you had sewer, how many units you could put on it. I just handed that to you for your information.
Okay.
That wasn't anything we had.
I think if county residents are concerned about our county, I do think it's a responsibility of the planning commission to plan, whatever that looks like. And I think taking all that in and coming to this group with something, I don't have enough information about the sewer thing or an overlay, and I'm not a fan of overlays because it's zoning without saying zoning. It's like taxing without raising taxes. You pay more for food or gas, but we didn't raise your taxes, kind of scenario. So if you want to, I'm a fan of looking at, because I think our job is to look at what development looks like in this county 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
I don't think
Okay,
we've
guys,
given.
hang on. We have a motion to adjourn and a second, so we've already had our discussion on these items, if we want to continue discussion, we'll have to remove the motion to adjourn and go back to that item and bring it back up for discussion.
Let's vote to adjourn.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sorry, guys.
No, good. I'm glad you called us back in. I had forgotten.